On va justement maintenant avoir deux éclairages complémentaires avec Nicolás Galarza, please join us on stage, et avec Yann Grynberg de Singapour. Join us on stage, Yann too, and you will see that we have Tokyo, Buenos Aires, New York, and Singapore. So we are really like squaring the circle. And we'll try to get hands-on squaring the circle with Nicolás and your work on a sort of a global understanding of the future anatomy of cities, if I may say so. The floor is yours, Nicolás, for 10 minutes, if you can.
Thank you, Nicolás. Thank you, everyone, for being here. I'm going to be quick because we don't have a lot of time. Just want to make a small introductory remark in terms of the opportunity that I see you have here, the golden opportunity of advancing and creating a new university that I think is a good opportunity to advance the discipline and to advance the field. I, generally speaking, think that the fact that you're welcoming a number of schools should allow to be able to develop a more integrative approach. Some of you already have mentioned the importance of having a more holistic approach instead of having a more sectorial one. And I think it's also a good opportunity to promote the use of evidence instead of the use of dogma, which is one of the core missions of the academia. Having been in the field for a while, I've found a lot of dogma in the planning field. So what I want to present now is some atlas of some evidence of what has happened recently and how cities have grown globally on this study over the last 30 years. This is a study that I co-authored, that we developed at New York University in partnership with UN Habitat and the Lincoln Institute. I'm showing these two volumes just to kind of frame what you're going to see. The blue book refers to the quantity of expansion, how cities have grown during the last 25 years. And the red book refers to the quality of that expansion. We developed some 40-some metrics. In 10 minutes, I think I might get my hands in 2 or 3, but I think that should be enough to convey the message that I have brought. So I'm going to skip entirely the methodology part because, again, there is no time, but this is just a short introduction. We wanted to walk away from case studies, which is something that I mentioned a couple of days ago, because case studies are useful and allow you to have a very in-depth, detailed approach of, let's say, cities for what we're looking at right now. But sometimes they can be deceiving in terms of when you want to have a more general study. So in order to avoid doing more case studies, we wanted to have something different, which was generating a representative sample of cities that would tell us something about the world as a whole. But in order to do a sample, we needed to identify a universe. And you would be familiar, there are a myriad forms of defining what a city is. They oftentimes depend on the country. Even if they try to unify them, they vary on criteria. So we needed to have a unified, comparable methodology. And for that, we generated this universe of cities. By the year 2010, we identified that there were, I said it yesterday, I think, 4,231 cities of more than 100,000 people. This is the sample that we ended up selecting as a representative sample, stratified one, of 200 cities that you can see is evenly distributed. It's got the global north, the global south, the east, the west, rich and poor. And doing an analysis on 200 cities, a representative sample, would allow us to have an analysis, a global study, and make some statistics about the world as a whole. So what I'm going to present here is the results of that study that we conducted. Not before kind of stating the size of the challenge and the magnitude, it has been repeated here that from here to 2050, 2.5 billion people are going to move to cities, but that is a phenomenon that is going to be mainly happening on the developing world or the global south. And just to put things in perspective, the global south is going to receive 18 times more people than the one on the north. And the bulk of that urbanization on the north is going to happen in the US. So what did we find? What do I have to tell you now? Unsurprisingly, we found that, and Gabriel already touched a bit upon this, that cities have been growing very rapidly. Probably this is no surprise. But what was surprise to us is the extent to which these cities have been expanding. If you see, roughly 2/3 of the city at least doubled their population. Again, this is a global average. And 1/3 of the global average of cities more than quadrupled in size. And this is not necessarily common knowledge. And when you work with mayors, they're very skeptical about the fact that their ideas, that their cities are growing and are growing very rapidly. This is the evidence, and there are numerous things that we can prove. But that was, generally speaking, kind of a finding in terms of cities have been growing in terms of area very fast. And we expect them to grow a lot. This is an animation of Paris. We don't have time, so I'm going to skip the suspense of the animation just to show you how Paris has grown in the last 200 years, from the time of Napoleon to now. Population grew 20-fold. The urban extent of the city grew 200 times, 220 times. We found that the main drivers of this expansion have to do with the population growth and with the level of economic development. You know, I can't really get into this, but those are the main things that you find to identify. We did some regressions regarding that point. And I guess this illustrates better how two cities with roughly the same population, Lagos and Paris, having a very big difference on GDP, roughly 10 times. Paris is 10 times richer than Lagos, and then as a result, it would have an urban extent or an area that is 3.5 times the area of Lagos. Normally, when you think about the size of a city, you think about its population, but it's important to put these kind of numbers and kind of frame the thing, because there are important regional differences. So when I'm talking about the quantity of expansion, this is what we found. Gabriel again mentioned this a little bit earlier, that the physical area of cities is growing faster than its population. When we look at the change between 1990 and 2015, we see that population roughly doubled, but that urban extents grew 2.5 times. When we segment this between less developed countries and more developed countries, the difference is much stronger. Population doubled roughly, and urban extent tripled in the developing world. In developed countries, the tendency holds, the trend holds, but in a more nuanced fashion. So, of course, the relationship between area and densities and having the urban extent or the physical area growing faster than the population leads to a finding interesting, that densities have been on decline on the last 25 years. Even though we see taller buildings, that doesn't necessarily affect the general numbers. This is, of course, a world average, and it's very coarse, but it kind of shows you a very strong trend. On 1990, the global average density was roughly 170, on 2000, 130, and by 2014, it was around 90 people per hectare. Again, when we segment and we compare the less developed world with the more developed world, we find something interesting as well. Again, the trend holds on both groups, but you can see that places in the developing world are much more denser than those on the developed world. So when you think about policy, that already tells you a number of things, and a number of things that you might express and you might need. So this is just looking at how much cities have grown. Now, a city that grows a lot doesn't necessarily mean a bad thing. a city that doesn't grow a lot doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. There can be orderly development in vast amounts, and there can be disorderly development in smaller amounts. So to shed some light into this issue, we developed the second volume of this publication that we did, just to look at the idea of the quality of that expansion. And what we do here, these are all maps at similar size. Again, you can see different scales, being Buenos Aires one very big city. Paris would be roughly the size of Buenos Aires as well. And what we can do is compare the city, making a cutting point on 1990, and see which features behaved in which fashion before 1990 and between 1990 and 2015. And this is what we found. In a worrisome fashion, the share of residential areas that was not planned before its development grew. So after mapping the city, we saw that laid out areas, not laid out areas, were roughly 22% of the built-up area of the city by 1990, and that number increased significantly by 31% of the area that was developed after 1990. So the planning process there didn't happen as we would have expected. We're also seeing that cities are now reserving less land for rights of way, and as a result, the coverage of arterial roads has diminished. We see that before, on the city that was built up to 1990, on average, 83% of the area was or had walking access to arterial roads, and the areas that were developed after 1990 or between 1990 and 2015, only 69% had walking access to arterial roads. And arterial roads are important because they're the main corridors for public transportation, for sustainable transportation. And I guess one final thing before kind of laying some general ideas as a conclusion is that the new urban agenda, some of the SDGs talk about the importance of sustainable mobility, walkability. We were able to measure the average size of blocks and see if they have been increasing or decreasing. In principle, you can guess that a smaller walk is and a smaller block is a more friendlier environment to have people walking or using bicycles. Turns out, unsurprisingly, that the average block size has increased when you compare pre-1990 and after 1990. In less developed countries, the average area was 3.5 hectares. And after 1990 was 5.1, as you can see, and in more developed countries, blocks were already bigger, an average of 4.2 hectares, and it grew to 6.2 hectares. Now, I don't want to kind of end on a worrisome and negative note, but the findings are very clear in terms of us not accomplishing what we tried to do. Now, there have some important consensuses. We had a very nice description of the agenda and a strategy that France has developed to accomplish the SDGs. And all that strategy should be coped with evidence and with data, not to have wishful thinking, but actually some big kind of confrontation with reality. Now, it was very happy for me to be in this meeting, particularly when I found that there was a study of a country already looking at the urban expansion, which is what Gabriel already showed. So you already see different countries trying to develop these metrics, these kind of studies to inform policy. There was one in Argentina. We also did one in Colombia. We're about to do one in Mexico. I want to entertain the idea of having regional atlases because, of course, world averages are very coarse, and regional and countries vary significantly amongst themselves. So there are already country initiatives. We're looking into doing regional initiatives, and we welcome any partnerships to do an African atlas, a Latin American atlas, and a nation atlas of urban expansion. This platform, in a sense that we created, I'm almost done. I've got 30 seconds. This is UN Habitat has also used this idea of the sample to do some research on municipal finance, and what they have done is just gone, engaged local people to gather some data on municipal finance. Here you find a map and some classifications that they've made. And because I don't have a lot of time, I want to end with two things. On the right, you see haphazard, unplanned, a block in Thailand that was developed in 1984. And on the left, you see a map of public transportation of Canada. This is to say that we have done this before. Planning for expansion is not that difficult. There are two notable examples: the 1811 plan for New York City and the 1859 plan of Barcelona. One planned for a 7-fold expansion, one planned for a 9-fold expansion. A lot of intermediate cities in the developed world are going to be growing. We know how to do it. We have done it before, and we can promote a more sustainable transportation. This way, we're firm believers in open data, so all the shape files and the Excel tables, you can find them here on the Atlas of Urban Expansion or the Colombian Atlas of Urban Expansion. This is our website. Thank you very much.
Nicolás, thank you very much for sticking into the time frame, and also for showing out of this evidence-based approach that we are currently diverging, right, from the right way to implement like a nice, classical, rational way to sustainable urban development, mixing infrastructure, building housing, plot land development. And this is quite impressive how since the 90s we are diverging more, right? And we really need to come out with new sets of solutions, new knowledge, new discipline, new governance, as Laurence has mentioned, and new financial models, right? Breakthroughs. I would like to finish this section of, like, say, major challenges and issues with Yann, and get back to also what gathers us, that is academic issues, university contexts, and with the example of Singapore, which is a hub of both knowledge, sort of high-level experience and experimentation, share a few thoughts and elements of what you are doing in Singapore at Nanyang University, but also beyond that, how you are reconfigurating research, R&D, and experimentation to cope with ever-changing sets of challenges and issues. And definitely we need to come out with something positive, right? Not say, oh, it's terrible, we are diverging and we don't know where we're going, right? Because we are here to build solutions and to find out how to take action, planific action. So Yann, the floor is yours for about 10 minutes, and then we will wrap up our discussion with a few comments and get to the signature of the cooperation agreement I mentioned. Yann?
Okay, thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Yann Grynberg, and I'm French, but I will do in English for my colleague here to understand what I said. First of all, thank you a lot to give me this opportunity to give a talk this morning in this university. And indeed, I will present a different vision, Asia part of the vision with Singapore. So I promise I will be short, Nicolás, in my talk, because I know we have time constraints. And I like to begin with this figure to tell you where is Singapore, because maybe some of you doesn't know where it is. And I've always, in each conference I do in Europe, this question, so I prefer to put a quick slide on it. So you see the small dot at the bottom of Malaysia is Singapore. So it's really good. In context of Asia Pacific, let's say, area, Singapore is very, very small. It's 800 square kilometer, so 40 by 20, so it's very small, it's 5.7 million inhabitants. So it's quite huge in terms of density. And the objective the prevision, for 2050 is to have roughly 9 million inhabitants. So you can see how Singapore will grow quickly, fast during the next decade. So if I speak specifically of NTU, just a quick figure to give you an idea about the university, if you allow me to do. It's quite huge. Huge university is 200 hectares in terms of surfaces, roughly 32,000 students, more than 8,000 staff, and for the College of Engineering, we have roughly 800 professors. So it's quite huge. PhD students, as you can see, roughly 2/3 of PhDs are foreigners. So just to give you a global figure in terms of population of the university, in terms of ranking, the university grew up very fast. Let's say 5 years ago, we can say in a Shanghai ranking, NTU was roughly 200 or 250 in terms of ranking. Now is top 50 and even the number 1 in terms of young university in the world. So just to give you a global figure of how growing fast the university is. That is NTU. So it's a real picture, it's not a Photoshop picture, I prefer to say it. So using solar panels, so almost all NTU is covered by PV. This is why I like to show this picture. PV is solar panel. You have here 5 megawatt peak of PV installed, and we plan for the next 5 years to install 5 additional megawatt of PV, so roughly 10 megawatts. So it's quite huge. The problem that we have is that the main problem of Singapore in terms of renewable, and I want to insist on it for the growth of Singapore and the growth of sustainable development. The problem is we don't have wind. We have the same temperature all over the world, the year. So geothermal is useless because if you dig deeper, like 10 meters, 20 meters, you have the same temperature as the surface. So we have only solar as a renewable capacity. And even though the irradiance of solar is only 3.2 hours per day in terms of capacity, so even though we have only solar, it's not very useful. So it's not negative, we still use it, and we still do whatever you can with the solar capacity. And as you can see in the picture here, as I say, it's 5 megawatts, but only correspond to 3 up to 5%, I think I put 5, 3 to 5% of our need in NTU. The main reason is a lot of laboratories, of course, in the university. But so we cover all the rooftop. We didn't cover yet the facade and let's say parking slot for the reason that BIPV is quite, let's say, today not so much efficient and it's quite expensive too. So, but we are progressing on that. So I'd like to show this picture in this perspective. In terms of NTU, let's say, framework. How it works. Something works quite well in Singapore context. We call it a triple helix collaboration. It means, as a university, we have mainly our project goes in collaboration with industries and governments. So university, government, industries, as we call a triple helix. So this framework works quite well, that I represent at the top of it. And in addition of it, for all the research on sustainable research and also medicine, etc. We create institute of research that I will detail later, and also corporate lab and joint lab. What it means is projects that works with the government and industry, and bilateral with industry, on a big project, a 5 years program. And I just create one, and actually I have a second head. I'm a director of a new corporate lab in a campus, about $61 million. And the idea is to create new innovation in a field of sustainability, in a way on my research area, in a way. So we have 8 corporate labs today, so I can give you some, one with Rolls-Royce, with Hewlett-Packard, with Singtel is orange for France, so telecom operator. We have others in different fields of research. So it works quite well in Singapore context, and thanks to this type of framework and collaboration, it allows the research to growing faster than usual. If I go on the structure of NTU, we have, as normal university structure, different college of departments in the university, engineering, business school, science, medicine, etc. And as I mentioned earlier, in parallel of those college, you have a research institute. You have for different domains, one energy, healthcare, water, media, consumer insight, etc. I belong to the energy part. And the main focus and purpose of this research institute is to create multidisciplinary research and to be the link between the academic world and the world of industry. It's very important because we need to have this complementarity. Professors work mainly on basic research and they don't have the opportunity necessary to go to the industry. On our side, I come from industry before joining academy. On the academy side, they have the real field of experimentation, demonstration, but there are the lack of, let's say, basic research, experiment, and very more scientific aspect of it. So I really like this combination of knowledge and this synergy to go further and to see how we can bring an idea, a concept to a prototype and also to a demonstration in a real life world. So, and it works quite well in Singapore context. I have 2 more slides. I just want to add actually 2 main initiatives on NTU that we have. One we call Eco Campus Initiative that you have here is on my department also. And the idea is to collaborate with industries on demonstration of technology on those pillars, like green building, smart grid, urban mobility, modeling, and user behavior, and to see how those solutions can achieve, in a 5-year program, 35% of energy saving, of waste saving and intensity saving by 2020. So this project is almost finished. And we will have already a program for the next 5 years, until 2025, that we want to reach 50% of energy saving, so additional 15, so 15, and globally 50, with additional concept or pillar of health care and wellness area. So that's first idea. So on go in the direction how to make sustainable district and city for the future. And one more initiative, and I will finish on this one, that is directly on my department. We have a project funded by the government we call Cool Singapore. It's directly linked to the COP21 initiative to reduce by 2 degrees the temperature of the urban area. So our objective is 4 degrees. I think it's very ambitious, but let's try. And the idea here is to create a cool paint, but a specific cool paint for tropical environments that we will spread in a real building, in a facade, rooftop, and pavements on the road with a canyon aspect, etc. I will not go in detail, but the idea here is to see if this solution, of course it's not the only one, but if this solution in this context of tropical environment can help to reduce by 2 degrees the environment. So that's one solution that we'll develop, and the project will finish end of next year. Another initiative that, from my point of view as a sustainable director, is crazy, but I want to add also the government for the comfort of people, were also to bring, I didn't mention here, but to bring also, let's say, climatization outdoor the city. So I try to be against it because it's quite crazy idea from my point of view. But also, for your information, the aim of the government, they just create a stadium, big stadium in a called Sports Hub in Singapore, 55,000 seats, and they are all aircon based. So it means all in the bottom of the seat you have aircon system. So they compensate with PV, but that's the main also ideas of Singapore. So just for your information. But anyway, Singapore progress very fast, and with a lot of budget and investment from the governments. And I hope I am available for your question because I have really limited time for the future. Thank you very much for your attention.
Yann, thank you so much. We do have this time constraint, but I want to take 3 last minutes to wrap up our discussions. And hearing you talking about an open-air stadium with air-conditioned seats, I was thinking this is maybe why some solutions are coming from Asia now and are being looked at from other countries with envy. And you're right also to say that maybe from a purely environmental or energy point of view, this might not be super optimal as well, right? So we are something like looking for solutions. But the other thing is, and thank you very much for taking the time to detail a little bit this ecosystem of industry, academic, territorial innovation, which is really part now of the DNA of the university, because it was a striking kind of response to the challenges that have been described throughout the morning, from Buenos Aires to Tokyo to the cities globally, and this is why I believe academic contexts, which have been described as larger than just purely a portfolio of research, are so important to be the cradle of new solutions. So thank you very much for sharing this passion for research and I would say a smart energy of thought. I was thinking also that we have a chance to have this unique sample of expertise. We lack a little bit of parity, right? Thank you, Laurence, for being here. Otherwise, we would have only men on stage. Yes, I noticed too. And I think this is something we always have some things to change for the better, and I think we need to think about that. I'm including myself into that. But maybe in 1 minute for each of us, if we are considering the magnitude of the changes and the complexity of governance issues, but also of the opportunities on the table, what would be a top priority for, I would say, a science to society agenda in the next 6 months, 6 years, whatever? Professor Yoshino?
I would like to start about the relation between university and practical world. In many Japanese universities, there are excellent researchers, but their research is sometimes nothing to do with reality. And I think the combination between the two will be very important. And also to educate students, we have to give very practical examples. Otherwise, students do not understand what are the applications. And ADB Institute, we have about 20 postdoctoral students. And we are training them to learn about reality. And last one is how to implement our idea into real practical policy. There are 2 channels for me. One is I'm attending lots of government council meetings. Then I can initiate my idea into practice. Another one is I'm now working in Asia. The toughest one is we have to approach to minister directly. Because even if we go through bureaucrats, unless minister agrees, our idea cannot be implemented. So they need 2 channels, academic good research, and then convey it to government officials and practitioners.
Thank you very much. And the T20 agenda, which you refer to, will be about that. Gabriel?
Well, I'm totally following Professor Yoshino's recommendation. I would add that the academy needs to embrace implementation. So we really need to move towards where things are happening and be there. So partnership is really important. So how to partner with other sorts of organizations that could complement what academy can do. Just to give an example, we were talking yesterday with Nicolás about that, how, for example, a think tank sometimes can say things that academia cannot. Sometimes academia can bring certainty to numbers, to evidence, in a way a private research center cannot.
Absolutely.
So that's very powerful. Same thing if we look at private sector and the government. So I think that we need to, all of us, wherever we are seated, we need really to go to the field and try to make changes possible and visible. We only have 12 years, according to the IPCC, to stop the trend that climate is taking. And if we don't move very fast, that's only the time of 3 administrations. It's not a long time. So we really have to work together.
So connection to action, connection to governance, connection to partnerships.
Je pense que je vais dire à peu près la même chose. Il me semble que l'écart entre le monde académique et le monde, les collectivités locales, ou quelle que soit l'organisation territoriale qui existe, nécessite des efforts des deux côtés. Je déplore régulièrement le fait que les universitaires, de par les exigences en termes d'excellence académique qui leur sont imposées et que je connais bien, font qu'ils ont finalement une implication assez limitée et très concrètement parce que les journées n'ont que 24 heures et que l'argent vient de moins en moins de l'État, collaborent assez peu finalement avec ceux qui conçoivent les politiques publiques. Alors on a la chance d'avoir des opérateurs d'État, des gens avec lesquels on travaille. Et je pense que sans doute en sacrifiant quelque part un petit peu cette mission d'excellence, d'indépendance et d'autonomie, ils acceptent de se mouiller un petit peu plus avec les décideurs et les concepteurs de politiques publiques. Et de notre côté, sans doute aussi de les valoriser davantage. Et c'est un exercice de rencontre collective, en particulier en France. C'est pas pareil partout, mais en particulier en France, où sur lequel il faudrait que nous travaillions.
On y travaille. Merci. Yann.
Yes, indeed, it's confirmed what I present to you during my speech, a 10-minute speech. I just want to add on one aspect. I think, indeed, the Singaporean, let's say, triple helix area aspect is one of the solution. I didn't say the solution. At least
absolutely.
it works in Singapore, anyway. A solution also could be to find in the university some iconic project with the government and linked the industry with that. In that perspective, let's say academic professor who indeed may don't have the time or the means to do it, may be more represented in the community, more visible in that aspect. So industry may come further to them to work together. So it's like a little bit, I think, like a chicken egg area. You know what I mean? It means if you don't give them the need, they will not be visible. But if they are not visible, they will not get the need.
Okay.
You know, so it's complex. It's a complex system, and indeed, my belief is we need to go on that direction. Indeed.
Thank you. Call for the industry. Call to the industry. Nicolás, one last call.
My call is the following. I'll close with a short story. I do a lot of work on the ground, engaging with local governments, and one of these projects was done in a city of 300,000 inhabitants in Colombia called Valledupar. I'm from Colombia. I don't know if I mentioned that before. And I had 5 MBA students coming to work for a public space related project in the city, and in a very short period we managed to have a meeting with the mayor, with the planning secretary, the head of the Chamber of Commerce, the head of the real estate, and some community groups. And at the end of the conversation, a gentleman approached me and he said, I'm incredibly grateful to have people from New York University in this town in the middle of nowhere. Don't get me wrong, I'm very proud, I love my city, but what the hell are you doing here? He said, because here nothing happens. Here you cannot do anything. Capacity is so low. And I was very pleased to prove him wrong. I said, try to arrange a meeting within 2 days with the mayor of Paris, the head of the Chamber of Commerce of Paris, the head of planning of Paris, and it's probably going to take you 4 months. So my call is to work with intermediate cities, which I said it yesterday. There's a lot that can be done. It's much easier to work.
and 75% of the cities that have more than 100,000 million are intermediate cities of less than 1 million people. So that would be my call for the next 12 years.
So call to intermediate cities, communities, and to younger generations also, because they need really to also commit and come with an energy, the passion they have, and they can also work 24/7 without being paid yet, and contribute to the ongoing work. So this is also a human resource, a source of human resource and capacity building that should be used further. Thank you very much for answering the call, and I hope it has been heard. A warm round of applause. Yes, we can, I think.